Hello, Westminster. My name is Boyd Taylor, and I'm here to talk about the Residents Association's new venture, the Westminster Writers Journal, and visit with one of our contributors. The Writers Journal is a platform for creative expression, whether poetry, nonfiction, memoirs, or fiction, by Westminster residents, and the inaugural edition is now on sale at the Little Store. 33 Westminster residents have contributed to this inaugural edition, and my guest today is one of them, Carol Sykes.
Hello.
Hello, Carol. How are you?
Fine. Thank you, boy. Appreciate being here.
I thank you for joining us. How are you and Charles managing during these strange times?
Well, it is strange, but fortunately we're able to get out and take a walk in the neighborhood and stroll around in the pretty garden. And I have to confess that I have found on Mother's Day, I found it an essential trip to go visit my daughter, but we observed all the necessary standing masks on.
Social distancing.
Distancing and all that. So,
well, good for you. I think we're very lucky to be here, and
exceedingly.
I'm astonished all the time, every day, at the dedication and good cheer of the staff. They really are trying hard to make it as easy on us as it can be under the circumstances.
And indeed they do, with delicious dinners and food. And yes, we're very, very fortunate to be here. I agree entirely with you on that.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your work as a member of the editorial board of the Writers Journal. It's very good of you to agree to do that, and you made a great member to that editorial board. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I want to especially thank you for shepherding the cover selection, which is based on a photograph by Nancy Simmons. And I think what she did was outstanding. And what you did, your part in that was also outstanding. So thank you. I really like our cover.
Let me just say, I was thrilled when Nancy came. She arrived with several designs for covers for us to choose from, and I just was stunned. I thought they were just all wonderful. So we were very fortunate to have her. She was terrific.
She's really talented. She took that photograph and enhanced it, and I don't know, she worked her magic on it. It's really a nice looking. And if you look at my picture, you'll see that is the cover behind me there.
Yes, I wanted just to point that out because I didn't know whether you realized. That's right.
You're an artist as well as a writer. Where's your hometown?
Austin, Texas, born and raised.
Really, an Austin native?
A vanishing percentage of.
Yeah. There aren't too many of them here at Westminster, but there are some.
Indeed.
Yeah. And so you were naturally drawn to UT Austin for your undergraduate and graduate work.
Well, I left the summer after I graduated in January, and I left and I was not married, and I went to New York to Columbia Teachers College, and then came back to Austin, and Charles and I became engaged and married. And so, yes, the rest of my graduate work was done during the summers when, as you know, teachers have a good 3 months off. So I began to work on my master's degree, and it took a number of summers for me to get there, but I did finally in 1965 earn a master's degree in painting and printmaking.
Some of that time you were teaching in San Antonio?
I began in San Antonio, taught 2 years there, and then when Charles and I became engaged, I moved back to Austin and was fortunate enough to get a position in the Austin schools, because as you know, there's only one art teacher in every I was in middle schools. And so fortunately, someone whom I knew, I had gone to art school with them. And she told me she was leaving, knew that I had become engaged and would be moving back. So I moved right in. I was very fortunate.
Well, the arts programs are really under attack, aren't they, in the public
Yes,
schools?
yes, they are. They're the kind of the first to be taken out. And I don't know if this is still true, but the students chose between music, uh, art, and drama. Well, so many did not want to do drama and couldn't sing, and so I got everybody.
You got the tone deaf who couldn't act. Huh? Well, that's
So
funny.
I had some wonderful students, and I had some that really didn't want to be there.
That's funny. So, and how was it at Columbia?
Oh, it was wonderful. And of course, I was thrilled to be in New York City, and the classes were all in the morning. And so I would get on the bus, and Columbia, as most of you probably know, is on the west side, upper New York City on the west side. And I'd get on the bus and ride by beautiful Central Park and down Fifth Avenue, and I would spend a lot of afternoons in the Metropolitan Museum and many, many other places. I even saw young Frank Sinatra that summer.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Talk about art. So, well, I envy you that time. I'm sure it was really a great experience. So your areas of expertise, as you mentioned, are painting and printmaking. Do you do both still?
well, yes, I did. At one time, when we moved out to Lake Travis, which was in 1990 after Charles retired, we left Austin and moved out to Lake Travis. And I had a painting studio out there. And so I was primarily painting. But when I first graduated, uh, I created a little print lab. And of course, I couldn't ask or afford um, the big printing presses, and there was no such thing as flatbed press where you could go and rent time. So what I did in those years, those early years, is I made silk screen prints called serigraphs, if you want to use the technical name. So I did a lot of that, and then, but primarily painting. That's really where my most of my concern and consideration and my love and my energy was in painting.
Well,
And
your paintings are represented pretty widely. You had several shows, and they've been written up well, and
well, I have.
had a good career as a painter.
I've been very fortunate. I have to say I'm pretty much a local Texas painter. I never made it out of the town, but well, I'll take that back. Was represented in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and in San Antonio, and of course in Austin, and then traveling exhibitions, and I won a purchase prize in a Tyler show. So, but I'd have to confess that I'm a local artist.
Well, a very talented one.
Thank you very much.
And as well as a painter, then you're obviously, since we're talking here today, you're also a writer. Uh, I noted that you wrote a book called Fairy Tales Are Real. Is that a children's book?
No, although it really are fairy tales for adults, but they have certainly been read to children. They were based on some sort of inner work that I had done. I read a lot of things about dreams, and I went, did a lot of research on that. And
Mhm.
so my fairy tales were cloaked in stories and then they were about people that were actually true, and their reactions and responses to situations. But I also illustrated, and so for instance, our daughter was one, and she was a princess, and I had an opportunity to who's fun illustrations and things of that kind. So,
Fun.
but it was
Yeah.
primarily fairy tales for adults.
And the other book that I had a note about was Hudson Bend and the Birth of Lake Travis. I heard you give a review of that book, I think, uh, before you moved to Westminster, I believe, at
That's correct.
Book Festival.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
I
I
like
enjoyed that. We lived on the lake for a while, and just an amazing feat when you think about the lake, the creation of the Highland Lakes. And I have to think that that couldn't be done today. I don't believe it. I don't believe it could be done today. But do you have any stories you want to share about the birth of Lake Travis or creation of Hudson Bend?
Well, what you just said, you don't believe it could have been done today. It wasn't an easy thing at the time. In fact, because Texas had been an independent nation, we owned all of our so-called public lands. So, which is not true in all states. And so when we became a state, we continued to own our lands. Well, when they were building the dam, some very smart and wise bureaucrats in Washington did some research, and they said, oh, they can't do that. They can't build that. We have rules. The nation has to own the property on which these sorts of public edifices and so forth are built. And so they cannot do that. Well, that was really bad. But Senator Buchanan, who was alive at the time, said not to worry about it. I'll take care of it just as soon as the legislature meets again, or the Congress meets again. Well, he had a heart attack and died before that happened. So it took several years and a lot of input from people like Lyndon Johnson and others to write that law and to make a special dispensation, I guess you'd call it, so that it could be that we could in fact build a dam on property that did not belong to the nation.
Yeah, I remember that story, and I think that a considerable amount of money had already been spent on the dam before they ever got the approval.
Oh yes, absolutely. It was under construction, and
So, well, that is interesting because they couldn't have done it without the participation of without the federal government providing the money. So.
Correct.
So let's turn to your story in the journal. It's titled "Khaki Pants and a Fur Coat," and I have to confess, it's a bit of an enigma to me. The ending surprised me, and so where did the idea for this story come from?
Well, let me tell you that. I would like to tell you that, but I want to first tell you that today when I read, and it's a very short story, and it'll take only about 5 or 6 minutes, but I'm not going to read the last paragraph because I came up with an idea, as you know, and you approved of the idea. And what I want to do, I guess it's the teacher in me that wants to do this. I would like to invite those of you who are viewing this to give some pause and some thought to the ending that I gave to this story. And I would very much like to hear what ending you might have given. And so I've prepared a little poster here. Let me hold it up. And it says, I invite you to contribute. And I've given I really would love to hear from you. And you can either email, text, or telephone me. And we'll talk about it. And I'd love to hear what your endings.
That's a great idea. We'll show that again when you're done, so people can be sure and get a pencil.
Good.
Take down the information. So, with that said, Would you read some of the story for us?
I would be delighted. And it is fiction. And oh, you asked me where it came from. It came absolutely out of the blue. I, that doesn't happen very often, but I have in the past written stories, and I've gone back. One is about a matriarchal society. Well, I have no idea if anything I wrote was true, but it was fiction, and so I just had at it. And this was sort of the same thing. This came to me. Don't ask me, out of the truly out of the blue. But anyway, it's entitled Khaki Pants and a Fur Coat. I lay in my bunk, dreaming of escape. Although it had been a year since our unit had left the prison, I remembered every detail of that trip. We were given the opportunity to travel into town on a Saturday before Christmas. Again, this Christmas, our unit of prisoners, closely guarded, was selected to attend the local pageant at the town's civic auditorium. That was a converted movie theater. In a desire to prepare for the community and for the holy season, a group of amateur performers present a boring, overly sentimental, poorly performed version of the very familiar event of the Christ child's birth. The day dawned bright and clear and cold. I felt eager yet anxious. This was the day I had been anticipating since my last trip beyond the walls. Today, my efforts were concentrated on hiding my true feelings of anticipation. I did not attract attention. I did not express any unusual requests, nor did I appear to be difficult in any way. Making a false move would jeopardize my chance of being included in this year's excursion. When supper ended, everyone in my unit who had not appeared rebellious that day was separated out for the privilege of taking the trip into town. We feigned inconvenience and mild displeasure when we were marched from the dining hall into the steamy, unpleasant gang showers. The guards were there to see that we showered with soap, shaved. I wish you were hearing a male voice, but we showered with soap, shaved, and dressed in the fresh khaki pants and white shirts that were issued for the occasion, with the hope that we would be less conspicuous and more accepted. Our grumbling was commonplace and expected. Although wanting to remain unnoticed, I laughed out loud, remembering the anxious discomfort of the townspeople who attended last year's performance and were seated near us. Their awkwardness had been heightened when some of us purposely, yet subtly, exhibited uncivil mannerisms. When finally it was time to leave for town, I checked myself, falling behind several of my prisoner friends and appearing less eager than I was to board the bus. My 3 years at Huntsville had taught me to pretend to be inconvenienced by special events and disdainful of deviations in the routine. The road into town was pitted and pot-marked. The old bus rumbled and creaked and lurched through the darkness. As we rode along, the ride was short, but seemed endless and tedious, with a stop at the railroad track outside of town and a slow traversing through the streets recently made one way by a progressive town council. When I saw the lighted theater and the festive crowd, my heart leapt into my throat. It was ludicrous to assume that we were not conspicuous as we were hustled from our ancient bus through a side entrance wearing only dark sweaters against the chill night's wind, but that was the intent. We were seated singly and in pairs throughout the small theater. The audience was assembling quietly, taking their places, and pretending not to notice the drab, identically clad prisoners dispersed and waiting for the show to begin. The house lights dimmed, and actors appeared to make their first pronouncements, when suddenly there was confusion at the center of the stage, on the center of the stage. A prison guard stepped forth from stage left. The house lights were brought up. The audience was instructed to remain calm, and my name was called. I was told to stand up and slowly walk with my hands at my sides up the center aisle toward the lobby. As I rose and stumbled over feet belonging to stunned and fearful theater patrons, I could see others rising to block the side aisles. My movement up the center aisle was deliberate and concentrated toward reaching the lobby as I had been instructed. Now, what kind of an ending would you put to that? Perhaps you may, there's a clue in the title of about my ending, with the title being khaki pants and a fur coat. But, and again, my apologies for not a male voice. But anyway, I really invite you to pause and think about what in the world how this is going to end. And maybe you have a wonderful idea, and I'd love to hear it, because there are a myriad of endings that there could be.
Show them the address again, would you?
Yes, here's the address. So let's have a conversation. Here, you can either email me or with my phone number, and you can call or you can text. Any of those things, and I look forward to chatting with you about it. And I hope you're not sorely disappointed that I've cheated you out of an ending, but I thought it would be fun to do this.
Well, it is fun, and it'll be interesting to who you hear from and what they have to say. But I'm going to warn them, we're not going to let you rewrite the story. just because they come up with another ending. So, yeah, that's great. That's great. And that story, the part you read, evokes such unusual images. Those convicts scattered through the theater with Huntsville residents, and I mean, I remember going to Huntsville and seeing the rodeo, but they were all over on one side. So anyway, it's a great story, and I know that our viewers will take it from there. Let's hope so.
Well, there were not many fiction pieces, and so remember that this, I really let go with this. So
it's a lot of fun. It really is. And thank you. Thank you
so
so much for being here today, Carol.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it very much.
And so to all of you watching out there, the Writer's Journal is now available at the little store. $15 for the regular edition, $17.50 for the large print edition. You can use your fob and put the purchase on your Westminster account if you prefer to buy. But if you prefer to buy with a check, call Mike Roach or Lori Humphreys, and they will take care of you. Both editions and an ebook version are also available on Amazon. And finally, our ability to put out a fall edition depends upon the sale of this edition. So we encourage you to buy one, buy several. They make great gifts, and you'll be glad you did. So this is Boyd Taylor saying thanks again to Carol Sykes for being here today. Send her endings. And thanks to all of you Westminster residents for tuning in. And we'll see you soon. Stay safe.